I think I finally know why I collect things. I've been thinking about my grandmothers lately. Both of them were collectors. They couldn't have collected things that were more different from one another. One of my grandmother collected dolls, and she didn't just collect dolls, she made dolls. I remember her collection. I remember looking at the dolls and looking through books about dolls. They were all ceramic or porcelain dolls, not these plastic dolls they sell today. I don't remember becoming a doll collector, because I didn't. Then there was my other grandmother. She collected books. She had hundreds of books, books on shelves all over the house. And you would think that growing up around somebody who had all those books, that might have turned me into an enormous reader. But I didn't, because they were all romance novels. I was not a romance novel child. So perhaps if I hadn't moved away from Indiana when I was 9, things might have been different. Maybe I would have stayed there. Maybe if I would have stayed there, maybe I would have discovered those books when I was older. Maybe Grandma and I would have sat around reading romance novels together. But that didn't happen, and I never really developed a love for romance novels. The closest I've probably come was probably Forever by Judy Blume when I was a kid, and that was probably the last time that I ever read anything like that. I'm pretty sure that wasn't Grandma's collection. What I did read were biographies, how-to books, things that taught me something. When my grandmother moved to Florida, this is the other grandmother, I would read at her house. And when I was 12, I read my first biography, and it was on Eleanor Roosevelt. I remember being fascinated, not because I thought I was going to become a historian, but because people are fascinating. Good morning. You guys want some food or something? Daddy, of course, always standing the closest. Good domino. Why don't you feed us instead of just filming us? Yeah. I wasn't a reader. I was a curious person. I think I've spent a lot of my life thinking of myself as somebody who wasn't really a reader. And that's not actually true. I do read. I just didn't read in the way that I thought a reader was supposed to read. As a teenager, there was some fantasy, like The Vampire Lestat, of course, and everybody read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've read a truly astonishing number of textbooks through the years because apparently schools thought I needed to know everything. I read children's books to my own children when they were little, and then came Harry Potter, and Harry Potter changed everything for all of us because suddenly we were all reading books together, we were talking about them, we were waiting for the next one, and I think that was my reintroduction to books. Because I was working so hard as a nurse, I didn't even think to pick them up. Not as something that I was supposed to read, but as something I wanted to experience, and I still love that feeling. There's something magical about curling up with a book when you have the time. But honestly, one of my greatest pleasures now is listening to books while I'm cleaning or doing laundry or working around the house. And there's something about having someone tell you a story while you're doing something completely ordinary. It makes the ordinary feel a little less ordinary. And I've realized something. Maybe I've never really been a book person. Maybe I'm a curiosity person. I want to know how things work. I want to know why people do the things that they do. I want to know where things come from. I want to know what somebody else's life was like. And that explains the Eleanor Roosevelt biography much better than anything else does. Then I started collecting. Somewhere along the way, I became a collector of things, and I don't think I noticed it happening. I collect handbags, obviously. There's absolutely no evidence to the contrary. I collect journals, paper, planners, craft supplies, things that I think I'm going to use, things that I might use, things that I definitely intend to use, things that I saw once and thought, oh, that's wonderful, and brought it home, and perhaps most dangerously, things that represent a version of myself that I would like to become. A more organized version, a more creative version, a more artistic version, a woman who has time to sit down and make beautiful things, a woman who reads more, a woman who journals every day, a woman who has a perfectly organized craft room. That woman apparently requires a lot of supplies. Why do we collect things? This is the part I've been thinking about. Why do we collect things? Because I don't think it's really about the things, not entirely. Sometimes we're collecting memories. Sometimes we're collecting possibilities. Sometimes we're collecting pieces of our identity, or so we think. Sometimes we're collecting a little piece of a person that we used to be, or a person that we hope to become. My grandmother's collected, and now I collect. And suddenly I'm wondering if this is something that gets passed down. Not necessarily objects, but the instinct. The desire to surround yourself with things that tell you something. Things that make you curious. Things that make you happy. Things that remind you of somebody, or things that make your house feel like your house. And there's nothing wrong with that. I actually think collecting can be wonderful. But there's a point where collecting stops being joyful and starts becoming clutter. And I think I've reached that point. The problem with loving too many things. Here's the thing nobody tells you about collecting. Eventually, you run out of room. I think I'm there. I'm there with my handbags because I want them to fit in a certain cabinet that they don't fit in. I am at the we need to have a conversation stage with my stuff. Because I have projects I want to do. I have things I want to learn. I have journaling projects I want to create. Paper art that I want to experiment with. I have books that I want to read. And I need room. Not theoretical room, like actual physical room. A place to sit down and work. A place where I can see all of my supplies. A place where I can reach and think. A place where I can reach the things that I own. And I really need to know where all of those things are. And that means I'm going to have to do something that is surprisingly difficult for a collector. I'm going to have to decide what stays and what goes. The collector dilemma. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the difference between collecting and keeping everything. They are not the same thing. A collection should have boundaries. Otherwise, it's not really a collection. It's an inventory. I don't want inventory. I want things that I love. Things that I use. Things that tell a story. Things that still make me happy. And that realization has led me to a rather frightening conclusion. I'm going to clean out my handbags. Yes, there. It's happening. I'm actually going to do the purge. And before anybody panics, I'm not giving up handbags. Let's not jump to ridiculous conclusions. I am, however, going to give my handbags boundaries they have not had before. Bad handbags. The handbag purge. I've decided that my handbags are going to live on designated shelves. That's it. These are the shelves. This is the space. When the space is full, it's full. Because I have other things that I want to make room for. And that means every bag is going to have to earn its place. I'm going to have to ask myself, do I love it? Do I use it? Would I buy it again? Does it have a story? Does it fit in the current life that I am actually living? And perhaps the hardest question, if I didn't already own this bag, would I bring it home today? Because sometimes we keep something simply because we already spent the money, or because it was hard to find, or because we thought we'd love it, or because someone else loves it, or because we're collectors, I think. But keeping something isn't the same thing, but keeping something isn't the same as loving it. And I want my collection to feel like a collection again, not a storage problem. Making room. And this is where the handbags connect back to everything else. Because I'm not cleaning out just to have less. I'm making room. I'm making room for things I want to do next. Journal, read. I want to make things. I want to experiment with paper. I want to experiment with leather. I want to learn new techniques. I want to create beautiful pages. I want my studio to be a place that makes me want to sit down and create. And I've realized that sometimes you can't make room for the next version of your life without letting go of the few things from your previous life. That's not failure. That's editing. Gotta edit. And maybe that's what I'm doing now. That's definitely what I'm doing now. I'm gonna edit my collection. I'm gonna edit my space. Maybe editing myself a little bit too. What we keep. So I've been thinking about my grandmothers. One collected dolls, one collected books, and somehow I became a collector too. But I don't think the real inheritance was the dolls or the books. I just think the inheritance was the curiosity, the pleasure of finding something wonderful, and the instinct to save it. To surround yourself with things that tell you who you are. And now I'm at the point in my life where I want to ask different questions. Not what I can collect, but what is worth keeping. That's all. And I think those are two very different questions. So I'm going to find out. I'm going to start with the handbags. Oh, look at all of them. This is not going to be easy. There are going to be some very difficult decisions. There might be some surprises. I don't know. There may be some handbags that I absolutely cannot believe I'm considering letting go. And there may be some that I look at and think, why on earth am I letting this take up space in my house? And once the bags are sorted, I'm going to take that space and turn it into something else, something creative, something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Because maybe the next chapter isn't about acquiring more. Maybe it's about making something from what I already have. And perhaps that's the real difference between collecting things and creating a life. I'll see you in the next one. That is where we will be cleaning out handbags, and I have a feeling this is going to be interesting.
That line over there at Home Goods was 40 people deep. So I was like, I ain't staying in here for that long. Hire some people.